Hi everyone, George DeCosta from the Hunting Griff here again. Today we're going to go over e-collars. I'll talk to you about how I use them and what I think is the proper way to use them. Before we get into that, I want to kind of go over something about e-collars with you. First of all, for those of you who are out there who think I would never use an e-collar on my dog, I want you to know that I was that person. I was around many years ago when e-collars were first starting to be used, and they were called shock collars. And that's exactly what they were, shock collars. And after witnessing how some people used those shock collars, I thought, no way ever will I put one of those on one of my dogs. However, things have changed greatly, and I now do use the e-collars. But just like anything else, like a firearm, your car, a swimming pool, a knife, used correctly, they can be beneficial to you. Used incorrectly, they cannot be beneficial. They can actually be horrible. So I think an e-collar can be one of the most humane tools to use when working with a dog that's at a distance, but it can also be one of the most inhumane tools to use if used incorrectly. Let me mention something about the original shock collars. That's what they were. They were just basic shock collars. And if you think about this, think about your first computer. The first computer that did mathematical equations took up the whole size of this room, maybe even more, just to do mathematical equations. Now, your cell phone can not only do those mathematical equations, but it can also be a camera, it can get on the internet, it can make phone calls, you can play games on it. That little phone not only does what the first computer did, but does a whole lot more, and it's much smaller. That's the same thing with today's e-collars. They are not the old shock collar. And let me just go over that a little bit. Today's e-collars have a lot more functions. For instance, the basic e-collar has not only stimulations levels, some of them go from 1 to 50, 1 to 24, 1 to 10, but it also has sometimes a tone and sometimes a vibration. Not only that, you can get into e-collar that has training abilities, has stimulation abilities, has tone, has vibrations, but also has a GPS on it. And I find that, in fact, I wouldn't be without one on my dogs. I hunt all over the United States, and when I'm in a strange area, I want to know where my dog's at. So the e-collar of today is not the old shock collar of yesterday. So having said that, and watching what can be done with an e-collar, I now do use them. But let me explain the way that I use them. And let me tell you what I think is the wrong way to do it. And I'll say this first, because I get a lot of dogs come to me that have been introduced with an e-collar the incorrect way, and now it's very hard to use the e-collar for training methods. If you're going to get an e-collar, excuse me, and put it on a stimulation that makes your dogs jerk or yelp or bark, and then you hit that dog to make it come to you, to me, that is completely wrong to do. And not only that, it circumvents the future use of the e-collar. I want my e-collars to be not painful at all for my dog. So the way that I use them is I find the setting that makes the dog feel uncomfortable. I look for just a slight twitch of the head while the dog's playing. Kind of like if somebody was grabbing you right here and you went, ooh, what is that? Stop that. It's an annoying. It's not an ouch, it's not a bark, it's an annoying. And that's what I want to use for my training stimulation when I'm using that with a dog. And let me also say this, never use an e-collar, in my opinion, with a dog that doesn't already know how to do the command. Meaning, if I'm going to teach a dog to sit, we'll say, and just because it's the easiest one to demonstrate, sit, usually you're putting pressure on the dog's rear end. I push from the front and I make the dog sit. So you're putting pressure here. Once the dog learns to sit, you can add the e-collar, make the dog feel a little uncomfortable, and say sit, and as the dog goes down, it turns off the e-collar. So what the dog does is it learns to turn off the e-collar, and it becomes uncomfortable with the e-collar on. Now you can use that far away. We'll say, we'll use, if you were going into a come situation, And we've taught the dog to come with a lead and a recall. When the dog starts coming to you, you would turn off the e-collar. So say you had your dog on your lead and you said, come. And you put the e-collar and you had the dog coming towards you. As soon as that dog starts coming towards you, you turn it off. So the dog learns, as I comply, I turn off the e-collar. Now for heel, I use a slip lead on the heel. So as I move away from the dog, I say heel and I pull the dog in. If I was using an e-collar, after they already know how to heel, I would start the low stimulation on the dog so the dog just felt uncomfortable and say heel. As the dog moves to my leg, the e-collar goes off. Again, you're teaching the dog to turn off the e-collar. It's not a penalty. It's no different than the pushing down of the rear end if you don't do it with high stimulation. But you can do this when a dog is further away from you than right here. That's when I find the e-collar very useful. Force fetch, I don't force fetch a dog till they're much older, but for those of you who do force fetch your dogs, I use, again, a very low stimulation when I get the dog to hold. Dog picks up the item as it goes in, turns off the e-collar. So it's very low stimulation, no pain involved. I like to say that the dog is uncomfortable. And that's how I use my e-collar. That's the initial training after the dog knows the command. After that, I will go to a beep on my e-collar. So I will beep prior to the low stimulation. And once the dog has learned that, the dog will hear the beep and know, okay, the commands, I need to comply. For instance, come, the dog doesn't come, beep. And then the stimulation, the dog starts coming. The dog will learn real quickly, come, beep, oh, I will come now. So my dogs all come on the beep. And if you notice, these don't even have prongs on them. Backyard right here, we have no fence in our backyard, so my dogs run freely. And all I do when I want the dog is just beep it, and my dogs will come. I don't have to yell out the back door, CK come, or Coda come. All my neighbors hearing me yell for my dogs. I just beep it and they come. And if I turn the e-collars on and call dogs, you'll see they run and they want the e-collar on because it's not something painful for them. When I start with the e-collar, I do not use it for about 2 weeks. I just put it on the dog for a few hours a day, every day. You don't want your dog to be collar wise, which means you put the e-collar on the dog and then you stimulate the dog to start doing stuff. That dog starts learning this thing is a tool and I don't like it, and it becomes collar wise. So it starts minding you when the collar's on, but doesn't mind you when the collar's off. I leave the collar on. In fact, these collars are on my dogs all the time during the day. I just took them off a little while ago because it doesn't bother them. There's no prongs on them anymore. And they're not collar wise. I beep it, they come to me. Coda is going deaf. So here's another reason I like the e-collars. I've trained 2 dogs, or helped train 2 dogs that folks had that were deaf. Those dogs would not have been able to go outside on their own, would not have been able to hunt, had we not had today's e-collar around. And what we did is we taught the dog, same command, with either, say, a lead pulling it in, or sitting down, or wowing by picking it up, and then we added the vibration to the command. Those 2 dogs now can run around in the field by themselves. They can whoa with the vibration and they can come with the vibration. And now those folks have a dog that they can get out in the open fields with. The dog enjoys themselves, and so do the people. And without the e-collar and the vibration on the e-collar, that couldn't happen. So should you or should you not use an e-collar? That's going to be your choice. My thing is I want to have an e-collar on my dog for a number of different reasons. 1 is for training. 2 is for the GPS mode. 3 is if I have a dog hard of hearing, I can vibrate the dog to come to me. And 4 is what I call save a dog. So on my e-collars, I program them. There's actually 3 buttons. 1 is the beep. I'll turn this one on. 1 is the beep, and that's what I use 99% of the time. When I'm training, the other one's on a very low setting. That's the one I call my uncomfortable setting. So the dog's uncomfortable and learns to turn off the e-collar. The next button is I call my save a dog button. This is a button that does have the stimulation that shocks your dog and makes it go ouch or whoa or bark or whatever the case may be. When does this come into play?